Discernment is not just a gift, it is a weapon. It is the ability to see beyond what is presented, to perceive the spirit behind the action, and to recognize when something is not as it seems. Too many people live life at the surface level, taking everything at face value, assuming that what they see is all there is. But the spiritual realm is real, and what happens in the unseen world affects the natural world. If you do not develop discernment, you will find yourself being deceived, manipulated, and attacked without even realizing it. Discernment is what separates those who survive from those who thrive. It is the difference between being led astray and walking in divine alignment. The enemy is crafty. He doesn't always come as an obvious threat. Sometimes he comes in the form of a friend, a family member, a trusted voice, or a familiar presence. If you are not careful, you will mistake an enemy for an ally and welcome destruction into your own home. Think about Judas. He walked with Jesus, talked with Jesus, ate at the same table, and listened to the same teachings. But despite all of that, he was carrying something different in his spirit. It took discernment to recognize that just because someone is close to you does not mean they are for you. There are people in your life right now who may smile in your face, celebrate your victories, and even pray with you, but deep down, they carry intentions that are not from God. Discernment is also necessary because the enemy is a master of disguise. He knows how to blend in, how to speak your language, and how to appear as an angel of light. Some people carry spirits of deception, jealousy, and control. And if you are not discerning, this is why discernment is not optional, it is survival. It is what keeps you from stepping into relationships that drain you, from connecting with people who mean you harm, and from falling into traps that have been set for your downfall. There is a reason why every time you are around certain people, your spirit feels heavy. There is a reason why after certain conversations you feel drained, confused, or disturbed. The spirit in you is trying to warn you, but if you ignore the prompting of the Holy Spirit, you will continue to entertain what is sent to destroy you. Discernment is not just about knowing who is against you, it is about knowing who is carrying something that is not meant to be attached to you. The enemy doesn't need an open door. Sometimes all he needs is an open heart. If you are emotionally connected to the wrong person, you will excuse behavior that should never be tolerated. You will explain away the warning signs. You will allow access to someone who is planting seeds of negativity, doubt, and fear in your life. That is why discernment is so critical. It protects your peace, your purpose, and your destiny. Discernment is also what allows you to see beyond emotions. Just because you love someone does not mean they are good for you. Just because someone has been in your life for years does not mean they should remain. Longevity does not equal loyalty, and familiarity does not equal favor. Some of the people who have been in your circle for the longest time may actually be the ones holding you back. But if you lack discernment, you will mistake loyalty for bondage and refuse to walk away from what is secretly working against you. You cannot afford to walk blindly. You cannot afford to ignore the signs. You cannot afford to continue allowing the enemy to operate through people close to you simply because you do not want to believe it. Discernment will save your life. It will protect you from relationships that were sent to break you. It will expose hidden agendas. It will reveal the truth beneath the mask. If you lack discernment, you will keep repeating the same cycles, keep allowing the same spirits into your life, and keep wondering why you feel stuck. But when you ask God for wisdom, when you pray for spiritual clarity, when you seek understanding beyond what your natural eyes can see, you will begin to recognize what is truly happening around you. One of the most dangerous things about spiritual attacks is that they are often subtle, creeping into your life little by little until they become part of your normal routine. If you are not paying attention, You will mistake demonic interference for mere coincidence. You will write off dysfunction as just the way things are. But there is no such thing as random chaos when it comes to spiritual matters. Everything has a source. When you notice certain patterns of negativity consistently showing up in your relationships, your home, your mind, and your emotions, you need to step back and ask yourself, what is really at work here? Cycles don't just happen. A cycle is a repeated pattern of events, often triggered by the same types of people, circumstances, or behaviors. The enemy loves cycles because they keep you bound without needing new attacks. As long as he can keep you going in circles, he doesn't have to do much else. You'll destroy yourself by making the same mistakes over and over again. This is why recognizing disruptive patterns is so critical. Look at the relationships in your life. Have you noticed that certain people always bring the same energy into your space? Have you realized that whenever you're around them, things start to fall apart? Maybe every time you start a new relationship, it ends in betrayal. Maybe every time you try to elevate in life, someone close to you pulls you back down. Maybe there's a particular family member or friend who always seems to bring confusion, arguments, or division into your home. That is not normal. That is a sign. There are people who carry spirits of destruction and they don't even know it. Some people are so used to living in dysfunction that they don't even realize they are the ones carrying it. But if you are not discerning, you will keep allowing those spirits into your space, thinking you are just dealing with personality flaws instead of recognizing the deeper issue. There are people who will smile in your face, laugh with you, and even share good times with you. But every time they come around, something in your life starts to spiral. Pay attention to what happens when certain individuals enter your environment. Do you feel a sudden heaviness? Does confusion seem to follow them? Does your peace disappear? These are not just bad vibes. This is spiritual warfare disguised as human interaction. The enemy operates through willing vessels. And sometimes those vessels are the people closest to you. Another way to recognize disruptive patterns is by looking at how your emotions shift when you are around certain people. Some individuals drain your energy, leaving you feeling exhausted, anxious, or discouraged. Others plant seeds of doubt, fear, or insecurity in your mind, making you question your worth, your decisions, or even your faith. The enemy is strategic. He knows that if he can influence your emotions, he can control your actions. And let's talk about repetitive struggles. If you keep finding yourself in the same type of toxic relationship, the same type of financial hardship, or the same type of emotional turmoil, it is time to stop blaming external circumstances and start recognizing the pattern. Some cycles are generational, passed down from one person to another. If you look at your family history and see the same struggles repeating, whether it be divorce, addiction, poverty, or mental strongholds, that is not a coincidence. That is a spiritual pattern that must be broken. Disruptive patterns often come with distractions. Have you ever noticed that every time you get serious about your faith, something or someone suddenly appears to pull you away? Have you ever set goals, made plans, and stepped into a season of growth only to have a familiar situation rise up and derail your progress? The enemy is calculated. He knows what buttons to push, what people to send, and what distractions to place in your path. If you are not alert, you will fall into the same trap every single time. The most dangerous part about negative cycles is that if you live in them long enough, they start to feel normal. You start to accept dysfunction as a way of life. You begin to believe that broken relationships, constant strife, and emotional exhaustion are just part of the human experience. But they are not. They are indicators of a spiritual attack that has been operating under the radar. Cycles don't break by accident. They don't disappear because you wish them away. They must be confronted, exposed, and dismantled. The first step is recognizing them, because what you fail to identify, you will continue to tolerate. If you do not become aware of the patterns in your life, you will keep repeating them, mistaking them for bad luck, when in reality, they are a deliberate strategy designed to keep you from stepping into the fullness of your destiny. One of the greatest battlegrounds of spiritual warfare is relationships. The enemy understands that relationships are powerful. They have the ability to shape your destiny, influence your mindset, and either elevate or destroy you. That is why he works through the people closest to you. He doesn't always send attacks in the form of sickness, financial struggles, or external hardships. Sometimes his greatest attack is the person standing right next to you. Relationships are meant to be a source of strength, encouragement, and alignment with God's purpose. But when the enemy infiltrates a relationship, it becomes a tool for distraction, destruction, and deception. The wrong connection can pull you away from your calling, drain your spiritual energy, and make you question things you once knew with certainty. This is why spiritual warfare in relationships is so dangerous, because it doesn't always appear as an attack. It can come dressed as love. It can come in the form of loyalty. It can be wrapped in familiarity. But underneath it all, it is an assignment from the enemy to delay, derail, or even destroy you. Look at the relationships in your life. Who is pushing you toward God, and who is pulling you away? Who speaks life into you, and who drains you with negativity and doubt? The enemy knows that he doesn't have to attack you directly if he can simply place the wrong people in your inner circle. Some relationships were never meant to last, but because of emotional attachment, we hold on to them long past their season. And the longer you hold on to something God never intended for you, the more it begins to pull you out of alignment. Some of the greatest downfalls in history were not caused by external enemies, but by the people within. Delilah was able to bring down Samson, not because she was stronger than him, but because she had access to his heart. Judas was able to betray Jesus, not because he was an outsider, but because he walked with him daily. The most effective attacks don't come from strangers, they come from the people you trust. That is why discernment is critical. You must be able to recognize when a relationship is under the influence of something other than God. There are certain signs that indicate when a relationship has become a battleground for spiritual warfare. One of the clearest signs is constant confusion. If every time you interact with a particular person you leave feeling drained, discouraged, or uncertain, you need to ask yourself what spirit is operating through that relationship. God is not the author of confusion, so if a relationship brings nothing but chaos, disorder, and instability, it may be time to step back and evaluate what is truly going on. Another sign of spiritual warfare in relationships is manipulation and control. The enemy thrives in environments where people feel powerless. If you are connected to someone who constantly manipulates your emotions, controls your decisions, or makes you feel guilty for setting boundaries, you are not in a healthy relationship. You are in a spiritual battle. The enemy will use people to make you feel obligated to stay in toxic situations, convincing you that if you leave, you are being disloyal or unkind. But there is a difference between God-ordained connections and demonic entanglements. Some people are in your life to push you closer to God, and others are there to drain the life out of you. Pay attention to how your spiritual life is affected by your relationship. Have you ever noticed that the moment you get serious about your faith, certain people in your life start to act differently? Maybe they start pulling you into distractions, tempting you with old habits, or making you feel guilty for changing. This is not just human behavior. This is warfare. The enemy will use relationships to keep you from growing spiritually, making you feel like you have to choose between pleasing people and following God. Some of the battles you are fighting are not even yours. They are coming from the spirits attached to the people around you. If someone is carrying a spirit of depression, anxiety, fear, or rebellion, and you are constantly around them, their battles will start to affect you. That is why the Bible says to guard your heart, because the people you surround yourself with will influence you more than you realize. You cannot afford to be spiritually reckless when it comes to relationships. Not every relationship is meant to last forever. Some people were assigned to your past but have no place in your future. But if you are not discerning, you will keep allowing old spirits to enter new seasons. You will keep making room for relationships that God has already called you to walk away from. And as long as you entertain the wrong connections, you will never fully step into what God has for you. There's a reason why when God is preparing you for elevation, he starts to remove people from your life. Not everyone can go where God is taking you. Some relationships were fine for a season, but if they are now causing more harm than good, you must recognize that the battle you are fighting is not just about personal differences. It is spiritual warfare. Breaking free from spiritual bondage is not just about walking away from toxic relationships. It is about recognizing the strongholds that have kept you bound and intentionally dismantling them. Too many people live in cycles of oppression because they fail to realize that freedom is not given, it is taken. You have to fight for your freedom. You have to claim your peace. You have to protect your spirit because the enemy's constantly looking for a way back in. The first step in breaking free is recognition. You cannot conquer what you refuse to confront. If you keep making excuses for the same toxic cycles, if you keep ignoring the warning signs, if you keep convincing yourself that things will change on their own, you will remain bound. The enemy operates best in darkness. What you refuse to acknowledge will continue to have power over you. Some of you have been in spiritual warfare for years and didn't even realize it because you assumed that pain, chaos, and oppression were just a part of life. But let me tell you something. God did not call you to live in bondage. Once you recognize the patterns, you must renounce them. It is not enough to see the chains, you have to break them. And breaking spiritual chains requires spiritual action. You cannot break demonic influence through willpower alone. You cannot free yourself from strongholds just by wishing them away. You have to declare your freedom, pray with authority, and shut every door that has given the enemy access to your life. One of the most important ways to break free is to cut ties with what is keeping you bound. This is where many people struggle because they are emotionally connected to the very thing that is destroying them. The enemy knows that if he can get you emotionally entangled, he can keep you spiritually trapped. That is why some of the people who hurt you the most are the hardest to let go of. But freedom requires sacrifice. You cannot be delivered from something you still desire to hold on to. Some relationships, some environments, some habits have been infiltrated by the enemy, and as long as you continue to entertain them, you will never experience true deliverance. Some of you have been asking God to free you while still holding on to the very thing he told you to walk away from. But God will not override your choices. If you want to be free, you must make the decision to close the door. Protecting your spirit is just as important as breaking free. It is not enough to leave a toxic situation if you do not guard yourself from returning to it. The Bible tells us that when an unclean spirit leaves, it will come back looking for an opening. Luke 11:24 through 26. This means that deliverance is not just a one-time event. It is a lifestyle. You have to stay prayed up, stay discerning, and stay intentional about your spiritual well-being. One of the most effective ways to protect your spirit is through prayer and fasting. Some battles will not break unless you deny your flesh and strengthen your spirit. The enemy will try to keep you distracted, tired, and too busy to pray, because he knows that a prayerless life is a powerless life. But if you stay in the presence of God, if you make prayer your priority, if you declare his word over your life daily, you will walk in power and authority. Another way to protect your spirit is by setting boundaries. Not everyone deserves access to you. Not every relationship is meant to continue. You have to be intentional about who you allow into your space, because spirits transfer. If you are constantly surrounded by people who gossip, complain, and operate in negativity, you will find yourself influenced by the same spirits. If you are always in environments filled with confusion, drama, and wickedness, your spirit will become heavy. You must protect your peace, protect your joy, and protect your mind. Your spirit is your most valuable asset. The enemy is not just after your happiness, he is after your spirit, your purpose, and your connection to God. That is why he sends distractions. That is why he tries to pull you back into old cycles. That is why every time you try to move forward, something or someone tries to pull you back. But when you recognize that your battle is spiritual, you will stop fighting in the natural. You will stop trying to reason with spirits. You will stop trying to fix what God told you to release. You will stop entertaining what is draining you. Breaking free is not just about removing yourself from bondage. It is about staying free. And staying free requires constant vigilance. It requires spiritual awareness. It requires a deep commitment to protect what God has placed inside of you, because the enemy is relentless. He will keep trying to get back in. But if you stand firm, if you guard your heart, if you keep your spirit covered, no weapon formed against you will prosper. Spiritual warfare is real, and it often operates through the people closest to us. If you want to walk in true freedom, you must develop discernment, recognize disruptive patterns, and break free from relationships that carry demonic influence. The enemy's greatest tactic is deception, making you believe that dysfunction is normal and bondage is unbreakable. But God has given you the authority to overcome every spiritual attack. Protect your spirit, guard your relationships, and stay in alignment with his will. When you walk in discernment and obedience, no force of darkness can keep you from the destiny God has ordained for you.